Line Extra, your weekly Galway GAA podcast with Ollie Turner and Sean Walsh in association with Seymour's Loughrea.
Hello everybody, welcome on into Over the Line Extra in association with Seymour's of Loughrea, where this week we're focusing in on club football. We've got the 4 intermediate quarter-finals and the last round of group games in the senior championship. But first, before we go talking big ball, let me bring in my colleague Sean Welsh. Sean, an amazing weekend of hurling championship action. I'm sure they're smiling out in Turlockmore after their big win over St. Thomas's, but how significant was it is the big question.
Look, I suppose at the end of the day, it was anytime you win, you'll take it. The ironic thing, though, is the way that group is now set up. Turlockmore, despite beating Thomas's and ending this 22-match unbeaten run, may not even get through to the quarterfinals because they play Sarsfields in the last game. The top 4 in the group are playing each other in the last round, Ollie. So they play Sarsfields, who are in great form. Sarsfields could beat Turlock, put them into the preliminary quarterfinals. Thomas's, there will be a reaction, there's no doubt. They could come back and beat Clarenbridge in the last game and get to the quarterfinals. So, look, at what we were seeing is a very good championship. I think that there was a fear early on. You kind of knew the 3 teams in Group 1 and indeed Group 2 of Senior A pretty early. Yeah. But now in both groups, other than Loughrea, who are straight through to the quarterfinals and in fairness are very impressive from what we're seeing thus far, the other teams all have something to play for in the last game, be it trying to get into the preliminary quarterfinals or the quarterfinals straight. Some
extraordinary matches, but for me the two that stood out were Moycullen's amazing win over Kilnadine Leitrim in the Pearse Stadium, one of the games of the year, but probably surpassed by Ceylon and Kinvara in the intermediate. That's an extraordinary match. So you talk about Ceylon and Moycullen and the great stories that they've created. We're looking for stories in the football championship as well, and I suppose if we look at Group 1, Sean, I mean, Moycullen's victory over Corofin has given them now control of Group 1 on 8 points. But Corofin played Tuam Stars. Now, there's no real threat to Corofin because they have a massive score difference there. But if Corofin were to give a good beating to Tuam Stars, and at the moment, like Tuam are on, we'll say +8, but if they were to lose by 7 or 8 points, they could be in real trouble with what might happen in Groups 2 and 3. So the onus really is on Tuam Stars to be very, very competitive on Sunday evening.
Well, we're going to use this phrase a lot now, aren't we, over the next few days, the best placed second team and the best placed third team. And this is where it can all go a little bit awry. As you say, one result here of a freakish nature whereby you lose by, say, 10 points. You know, if you're going down the home straight and you're only 3 points down and suddenly you're hit with a few extra 8 points later on, these are going to come into play because in Group 3, which is an intriguing group, you could have any sort of permutation coming there. And you could have one of those teams, or in Group B, not so much because Montpellier, Mylock and Salthill are in the pole position here. But how much you win by and how much you lose by could be influenced by this. So I think, look, as you say, Moycullen have been very impressive. But Corofin and Tuam Stars, I would imagine, if they met at under 12, will be a game of its own anyway. I mean, the rivalry that's there. Tuam were disappointing last time out, weren't they? And you would imagine that Kevin Reedy has a dressing room full of guys that are made to get it going again. And this is now knockout, effectively. This round 5 of no more than the hurling and now the football, this is where you set your year. And you go out of the championship now if you don't.
You see, the thing about these two games as well is that you've got Salthill and Oncararua playing at the same time as Corofin and Tuam Stars, because both those games are linked.
Yes.
And that's from Groups 2 and Group 1 together. So Salthill at the moment are on 6 points with a score difference of +21. Corofin on 6 points, a score difference of +34. Yeah. And this is, as you alluded to, Sean, to be the best second place team, to go in with the 3 winners into one pot and avoid having to play the Montpellier Moylocks or the Moycullens. So Corofin, you bet your bottom dollar, will be out to win that game. If they do, then unless Salthill win by 30 points, it's hard to see how that can happen. So Corofin have a lot to play for in this game, as have Tuam Stars, because if they lose, they'll be looking over their head at the likes of Annadown, who could get to 6 points in Group 2, and also obviously in Group 3 there's any number of teams that could get to 6 points and potentially knock them out. So there's going to be a lot of permutations.
And not alone the 6 points, but the criteria for the best place is the same as always, the number of points, but then you're down to scoring difference and scores for. So that's where this thing could open up entirely, where if you get one unusual result, it could skew a team's performance. And this is, look, it's great in a way because it makes the last round, like as of now, my Cullen, Mount Ballymaloch and Saltine, Macnacarra, we know are definitely there, right? For the rest, it's moving time.
It is. Let's bring in our own Tommy Devane, who's going to be out and about doing some live stream commentary on these games at the weekend as well. Tommy, I'm looking at the fixtures. You're going to be in Pearse Stadium for that intermediate quarter-final we'll talk of in a minute between Micheál Brannock and Ilan Oren. Of course, the second game there is Killannon Carlisle. So if we look at the Group 3 table, Tommy, because this is the first game you'll be at senior level on Saturday, there are so many permutations here as to what can happen. Obviously, for Killannon, they have no chance of qualifying, but they'll be anxious to try and jump out of the relegation. But Carlisle could conceivably get to 6 points, try and get to somewhere around a 0 or maybe even a plus score difference, and it might be enough depending on what happens with Corofin and Tuam and with the other group involving Annadown as well in Group 2.
Yeah, I think Group C has turned out to be a classic group in the sense that you got the two teams at the top, Claregalway and Milltown, playing each other at the weekend. But down at the bottom, that Carlisle Killannon game you alluded to, Ollie, that's a huge game as well. And not to mention Monavea Abbey and St. Michael's as well in that one. So I suppose Monavea Abbey had a good victory, turned over Milltown the last time, but they were disappointing up to that in the sense that they lost out narrowly in their opening 3 games. Killannon have beaten Monavea Abbey, Carlisle have beaten Monavea Abbey, and now Monavea Abbey play St. Michael's, who are in 3rd place at the moment, but looking to get to 7 points in that group. So, you know, Sean talked about permutations and stuff that can go wrong or for a club very easily over the next hour of football at the weekend. But this is the weekend I think that, you know, the supporters in particular are really looking forward to. This is as near to the knockout as we're going to get before the quarterfinals and the relegation semi-finals and playoffs. So even looking at that group, Ollie, it's exciting from a GAA supporter just to look at it and see, you know, that the groups have ended up this way, in particular Group C.
Yeah, you talk about that third group then. Yeah. I mean, Monavea Abbey have lost 3 games out of their 4, and yet they have a positive score difference of +1, which is incredible. It's quite ridiculous, really, when you think about it. I mean, there's other groups where you'd have lost 3 games and you might be -20. So, I mean, your own club, that win over Milltown you'd have been back home that night after being out and about at matches. That must have been a huge boost to the parish and to the club, giving them real belief that they could get another win and avoid the relegation battle.
Yeah, it was, and it was the thoughts as well, right after the game from the manager, Garvin McDade. You know, he knew there's something more in this team than what results had given them the opening 3 games. They were real underdogs against Milltown, and rightly so. Milltown were up there at the top and they were flying it. But I think the changing of the game, lads, was the positioning very quietly and astutely by the Monavea Abbey management team to put Killian McDade in at full forward, maybe 5 minutes into the second half. And the minute he went in there, he just caused consternation in there. He got 2 goals and set up another goal. And really, Milltown were rocked, lads, and there was no way back for them. Time went against them and a few different things didn't go their way. And I know they're missing a couple of key players as well, which they're going to be missing for a while now as well. But yeah, Monavea Abbey are in a good place after that game, but it's how they react to that victory now and how they react to taking on St. Michael's, because I think that there's a very tough group in its own way. There was nothing much between Claregalway, Milltown, Michael's, Carlisle, Monavea and Killannon. So look, still a lot to play for. Monavea Abbey will be happy, but they do not want to be involved in the relegation like any other club, Ollie.
I'm just so excited, Sean, because we haven't got these too many opportunities whereby you've got 3 games over and back, and they're all of equal consequence. And literally, as you said, a point in any one of those 3 venues. So just to recap, 5 o'clock Saturday, the 3 matches in that Group 3 will all throw in together. In Athenry, it's Milltown, Claregalway. In Tuam Stadium, it's St. Michael's, Monavea Abbey. And in Pearse Stadium, it's Killannon, Carlisle. By the way, this man here, Sean Walsh, might have a bit of news about one particular Claregalway footballer who has a dog running in the Irish Greyhound Derby final on Saturday night. I mean, is he possibly going to think about playing the match and then hightailing it to Dublin, or what are you hearing?
Well, I'd say, seeing that he's training greyhounds, he probably has the route already planned. Yeah, I think the Greyhound Derby is late enough. Is it?
It'd be just after 9 o'clock, I think, from what I gather.
Yeah, 5 o'clock. You're in Athenry. You're on the motorway. It's doable. But look at what's intriguing. That's Peter Dibley.
What a story this will be.
Yeah.
It kind of got me thinking of Kieran Malloy and the mad dash he made a couple of years ago. for the Sigerson final from Corofin. But this is a different ball game. So if he's playing against Milltown, and surely he will, because it's such a big game for Claregalway. So
he actually made the team of the week twice, didn't he?
So far in the championship. He's having a great season.
Yeah.
So here he is with a dog in Trap 2 in the Greyhound Derby final in a very winnable race with 125 grand up for first prize. Now, forgive me, but if Claregalway are winning by 5 or 6 points with 10 minutes to go, I'm sure he'd be inclined to say to the manager, hamstring is feeling a bit tight. I need to go.
Yeah, you need to mind me. But it is. Look, it's a lovely story, and in fairness, we wish them all the best luck in the doggy part. But there's an intriguing part here as well. I mean, your own club, Milltown, started like a bolt out of the blue. Now there's a draw, there's a defeat, and you have Claregalway playing Milltown is the 1-2, the top two playing each other, right? But if Milltown say overturn Claregalway and Michaels get a result, aren't you changing the whole complexion of that group as well? Now, the other thing here is all those games are on Saturday at 5 o'clock, as you say, by which time, say, Down and Berna, for instance, will have an idea of who's where in that group. For instance.
They'll know what they need to do on Sunday.
So there's permutations all over the place here.
But as you rightly say, there's a lot of pressure on Claregalway in the context that, they should be winning that group now in this context.
Well, they're top of it now, and look, they've got, say, the move probably after the first game was Conor Flaherty to full forward, seemed to change their whole attacking philosophy. They now have Danny Cummins back as well, which is a huge bonus to them. Now they're picking up injuries as well, as is everyone. Milltown, I mean, Michael Martin and these guys are shooting the lights out. Started very well. Can they get back on the horse here? Because the prize, as we keep saying, for the quarterfinals, for just to explain to people, is that there's one pot with 4 that are seeded and there's one pot with 4 that aren't seeded. So, the 4 stronger teams, if you can join them, it's a better prospect of getting through. So there's
an easier path.
Yeah, and we've been saying about Group C all along that they didn't have the marquee team in with them. So there's a chance here for all of these teams, and I think we're going to see that at the weekend.
Let's switch back to Group 1, Tommy. We're going to finish off with a look at the other matches. We talked about Corofin, Tuam Stars, and we explained the permutations there. But obviously there's 2 other games to keep an eye on there as well, and that includes Uachtarard against Unspidale at 3 o'clock on Sunday in Pearse Stadium. And, for both of those sides, they're the bottom 2. Only 1 point for Uachtarard, none for Unspidale. And then you've got Moycullen taking on Navana Letchermore. That's also on Sunday at 3 o'clock. That is out in Rossmuck. So, I mean, you'd have to expect a Moycullen victory there, Tommy. For Unspidale, though, here's an opportunity for them to get off the bottom with the win over Uachtarard. But how big an ask is that?
I think that clash at the bottom is a tough one. It's a tough one for both sides, but on Spidgel, they've been struggling, and they're a dual club as well. We've seen them save their intermediate status last weekend, but that's a tough ask, I think, for on Spidgel at the weekend. You wouldn't see too much changing at the top of that group because it is what it is at the moment. But I'm sure Moycullen, Corofin, and Tuam, all them want to win their remaining games. Moycullen in particular looked at 6 score difference of plus 20, Corofin there with scoring difference of plus 34. So again, it's a group that has probably sealed itself off from the last round. But yeah, there's interesting games to look forward to there as well at the weekend. And that Gaeltacht clash, I think, is the one at the end, up to Ireland on Spidgel. That's going to be very interesting for bragging rights alone, I think, lads.
The intermediate quarterfinals, which in truth are 4 big games because they're knockout. Yeah. But in Group 2, Mountbellion Moylock really have been so impressive here. I mean, plus 38, Sean, 4 wins out of 4. There's a real sense that Mountbellion Moylock are on a mission this year and might be thinking even beyond Galway if that's possible, while Corofin are still in the championship. But they look so good.
The daily, from what Barry was telling us a few weeks ago, is beginning to come back as well. So Salthill Knocknacarra will be happy enough, I'd say, with where they're at as well. They had the litmus test game against Mountbellion Moylock. The flip side of this then is Down, who lost the first 2 games to the big 2, as we call it, now have a shootout with Berna, and if they can do enough there, they could get themselves into the playoff picture here. And the other thing, I suppose, we're just mentioning, and each one of these groups, the bottom 2 places suck you into the relegation playoffs, and the relegation playoffs are not complicated, but you're caught in there, and that's the last place a club wants to be at the end of the championship. And we'll all look at various teams and say, you're too good to go down, but you can get sucked into this as well. So
Very
that's
easily,
why
yeah.
on this weekend, as I think we're going to see teams wanting to put their best foot forward for a lot of reasons.
Well, Billy, my lock St. James's, that's on Saturday at 3:15 in Athenry. And the way this championship is going, it would be impossible, I think, to predict anything other than a Montpellier victory there. Salthill, I mentioned, are playing Carrow on Sunday evening at 4:45 in Invern. And then the shootout is Annadown Barna. Now, Barna can't qualify for the knockout stages because the likelihood is two teams in groups 1 and 3 will get to 6 points. They're on 3, can only get to 5. But for Annadown, the key here, Tommy, is they will have a chance to resurrect something, albeit the chances are they're going to have to beat Barna by probably at least 6 points to get themselves to a 0 score difference or even into +1. And that's not going to be simple given Barna's topsy-turvy nature, including that big win over St. James's.
Yeah, not easy, but aren't they fortunate that they're in this situation considering the bad start they had to the championship? We've seen them the last day with Frankie Burke scoring 1-7 in Pearse Stadium, and I think they need a bit more of that from the other forwards as well. They enjoyed a lot of possession in that game, but they just took them for ages to put the game to bed. But yeah, it's interesting because if Annadown get 2 points, as you said, they're on 6 as well, and considering the positions in the other groups as well, Antrim is possible, but it's Barna, as you say, can't probably get there now, but they'll feel safe to be there, still in the senior championship for next year. So James and Carrow at the bottom, that's going to be interesting as well, because it's hard to see how James will overturn the county champions, but you never know. This is the last round of the group games, and this is where we may see some surprises at the weekend, lads.
And Annadown man actually said that to me at the weekend, that it may not be the first 2 games that caught Annadown, the losses against the big two, as we say, Montpellier and Salthill, but it could be not beating Carrow by more than what they did. So
yeah, we've seen that plenty of times, haven't we, in the past, at inter-county level even. Let's move to the intermediate quarterfinals, lads, and there's so much at stake here because so many teams have been knocking at the door in recent years to try and get up. And I suppose you look at Demore McHale's against Kilkerran-Clonberne. That's the first fixture that we'll be looking at. St. Brendan's, Corofin, Illawnor and Mihal Brannock's. 3 of the 4 quarterfinals are on Saturday. But the big one, the clash, and they all seem to be, however these draws are managed, it's brilliant that you get 3 derby matches pretty much. But Demore Kilkerran-Clonberne, Tommy, has all sorts of connotations as regards a derby match. I mean, literally 2 parishes right on each other's doorsteps. All of the hullabaloo about Shane Walsh seems to have died down a little bit now. But if anything, will this have galvanised this Kilkerran-Clonberne panel for a tilt at Dunmore?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that, Ollie. I seen Kilkerran-Clonberne against Ireland Ireland the last day. They were well beaten in the finish, but they did put in a good performance. Now, if Shane Walsh had gone at this stage of the championship, you'd be saying, that's an awful blow to Kilkerran-Clonberne. But they've known it now for a number of weeks, and he's toiling away up in Kilmacud, doing his bit up there. So I think, they're resolute, they're strong, they're very passionate in Kilkerran-Clonberne. And especially when you put them out against a green jersey from down the road and the Demore McHale's jersey, they become even more passionate and more determined to get a result. And, the quarterfinals now take on a life of their own, as we know, even in the hurling. Like, it doesn't matter what's gone on before this. This is 60 minutes. This is about how much you want to win it, how much you want to wear that jersey for the club, and how much you want to turn over the opposition. And I tell you, this game, Demore McHale's and Kilkerran-Clonberne, is really one to look forward to at the weekend.
That's what I'm going to be at for sure, albeit, Sean, you'd still have to say, like, if the first half Dunmore performance against Kilconnolly turns up, they're good enough to beat anybody. And I mean, that was probably the best half that anybody played in the Intermediate Championship this year. But the second half was probably the worst. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, so where does it really lie?
But if you're into Indian signs, Dunmore have an unbelievable record over Kilkerran-Clonberne over the years. That's the only other thing. So whether that means
mightn't
anything,
be many Indians around for the weekend though. But anyway,
it could be.
It could, but that is a factor. I mean, teams do have they're able to beat certain teams. But if you look at, I mean, St Brendan's semis last year, Dunmore. There's a little shade of Climber in Dunmore, like beaten last year in the final of their respective intermediate championships and coming back with a bit of gusto. As you say, Kilkerran-Clonberne have been knocking around this as well. I mean, I remember Shane Welch, I think, had a chance, was it against Clare Galway remember long range free, so they have a lot of experience as well. Ilan Orn is it their third semi in 5 years as well. So these teams that are knocking around here know what it's about. But Tommy is dead right. This is now knockout, right? Last Sunday, coming into an intermediate match, we'd say Aircourt were probably second favourites to Clymer, and they got into a right battle with Abbey.
Yeah, and that's to dig it out at the end, didn't they?
Dig it out at the end. So here you're now looking at, you can imagine Kilkerran Clonberne. There has to be, let's go out and show here.
A kick in this, yeah.
Brendan's would probably fancy the Corofin game because Corofin are the only second team that have got through, right? Probably have lost a few as it's gone on as well. So there's those permutations, and then Glenamaddy and Kilconnelly is a huge game of its own.
On Sunday, and we'll talk about Ilan Orn and Micheál Brannach's in a moment. But Tommy, like St. Brendan's, this is a big opportunity for them, and I don't know were too many talking about St. Brendan's as being in their top three if they were thinking about potential intermediate winners at the start of the championship. I have a fair feeling a few people are talking about it now.
Yeah, absolutely. They would have been further down the rankings than that, Ollie, for sure, at the start of the year. But, they've gone through a couple of lean years where, they were restructuring, regrouping. Not a lot of stuff happened for them over the last number of years. And they've come a little bit in under the radar, but not by their performances by any manner or means. They've played good teams. They've dished out defeats to a lot of teams that might have considered themselves in the running for the championship this year. So, yeah, and they're playing Corofin, and Sean is right, it's Corofin's second team. They've equipped themselves very well in the championship at intermediate level this year. But you just have to say that St. Brendan's, no more than John Moore McHale's and Kilkerran Clonberne and clubs like that, very passionate about their football. They look at their leaders from over the years and people that did well for them at county level and everything, and they follow big and they have big support. And you'd have to say in Dublin Park the next day that St. Brendan's probably, now we never know, should have too much for Corofin. But again, that's one that's whetting the appetite as well for the weekend. But like St. Brendan's, I think, will fancy themselves to get to a semi-final. Corofin might have other ideas, lads.
Something has to give as well in that Micheál Brannach Ilan Orn game, because these are two sides that have been knocking in and around the door of the championship. Micheál Brannach's going up and coming down again. Lost two of the best intermediate finals we've seen in years, including that one on penalties to Uachtarard in the replay a couple of years ago, and before that, of course, on Spidale as well. So Micheál Brannach's know what it's like to win at this stage of the championship. But are you getting the feeling that Ilan Orn at some point are going to make the breakthrough as well? And could this be their year?
Yeah, exactly. I thought it would be even previous to this that they would have gone on and gone further in the championship. But looking at them this year, they seem to have improved. I don't know if they've got extra players in from somewhere, from another island or whatever, but they are just seem to be a little bit more polished and a little bit more ready. I seen Stephen Joyce on the sideline the last day and making a couple of changes, bringing in a couple of lads that I mightn't have seen before or whatever, too much. But you still got the likes of Tyler Flaherty there, Colin O'Brien on, and there's so many good players there on that Ilan Orn team that their day will come. Not quite sure if it's going to be this year, but this is a huge test now for both teams, Ilan Orn and Micheál Brannach's. Micheál Brannach's probably fancy themselves to go most of the way this year in the championship as well. They have had some good victories during the year, but I suppose if this is the opening clash of the intermediate championship quarterfinals at the weekend, or one of them anyway, it's a huge one to look forward to in Pearse Stadium, and no doubt there'll be a big crowd there as well from both the islands and indeed from out around Micheál Brannach's as well. So look, great game, won't be much in it, and I suppose we could have the extra time job coming in there as well, lads.
And of course the injuries, like Sean Mulcairns, for instance, like a player like that, if he's out, is a huge loss. Like, you're also, as we kept talking about in the intermediate championship, you've played 3 games over 6 weeks, and now we're straight into the knockouts. So, if you have a guy that hamstring is tight or whatever, this is where it's going to be showing up now in from quarterfinals on. So injuries and having a clean bill of health is huge coming into these games.
I suppose the thing about Brannach's is, they started like a house on fire with that big win over Oranmore Mary 18-11, but then a setback, losing to St. Brendan's in Duggan Park and clawing out a draw against Caltra the last day.
They've limped here, really, haven't they?
Just about fallen into the quarterfinals out of that group that could have just as easily gone the other way to Caltra. So for me, Ilan Orn are probably marginal favourites in that one. But
the catalyst could be as well then that last minute equaliser could open it up for Brannach's.
And you're right about Sean Mulcairn. I mean, he's not far away from a return, having suffered that injury in the Sigerson right at the start of the year. And what a boost he'd be if he was fit to be able to come in. We got to talk about the last match, lads, of the weekend. And in fairness, you talk about Dunmore and Kilkerran-Clonberne being a big derby, but this is another classic encounter, Kilconnelly and Glenamaddy. And classic in the sense that both sides have been going really well, Tommy, in the championship this year. Darren Malahy down training Glenamaddy. They look like a real force now to be reckoned with. And of course, Kilconnelly as well, with Paul Mannion and the quality that they have to show as well throughout their championship up front, scoring for fun as well. I'm not so sure this one is as easy to predict. And if any of the games would need extra time and maybe go all the way to penalties, this could be the one.
Yeah, that's just one of the other games that I had ticked off here that, could go all the way in that contest. Kilconnelly have been around maybe a bit newer in the championship over the last number of years than Glenamaddy. Glenamaddy would have gone through a spell where they were maybe struggling a little bit, struggling for numbers. But as you rightly said, Ollie, they're rightly there now, and they really fancy themselves this year at having a right cut at it. They were in junior not so long ago, a few years ago. Now they're at intermediate in the quarterfinals, taking on Kilconnelly, who themselves, I suppose, will feel maybe that they didn't do as good as they should have over the last number of years. But they're two teams in form. I wouldn't try and separate the two of them the next day, because you'll probably take maybe a goal or two from either side if that's to separate them, because on their point scoring, I'd say, both of them are equally adept at getting fine scoring averages in games, and it could be a high scoring game and that one the next day. But I wouldn't like to pick that one in fairness to both teams.
For a start, I cannot see it being a high scoring game at all, Tommy. I have to disagree. I'm looking at Glenamaddy's defence. It's the best in County Galway at any level. They've played 3 matches, Sean. They've conceded 19 points, no goals. I mean, that's like 6 points a game they're conceding. And I mean, I know Malahy's a defender or whatever, but he's teaching them how to get behind the ball, and they are scoring at the other end.
And you're now going into a knockout game.
Yeah.
Where you have to stay alive. So that's hardly going to change.
Oh, Tommy, this could be 9-8, 8-7, something like that. But isn't it so exciting though? Let's just look at it in totality. Like these club players getting a chance to shine on a stage where there's no issues with county players not being able to play or being told not to play or having knocks because there's an All-Ireland coming up or whatever. They just have a clear run at it. I mean, we think back to our time playing football. Wouldn't you have loved this sort of opportunity?
You would, of course. And I think there's, for all teams involved, like, you don't need much to get you up for the next weekend now. There were some of the league games there, or some of the group games in the championship where people would have said, we lose this one, what harm? We have another 3 to go, another 4 to go. And likewise, it happened in the second round. There's no out now, lads. It's as simple as this. You got to turn up for your club the next day. You got to be proud of the jersey that you wear. And if you want to get to that next stage for intermediate semi-final and for the senior, it's to get out into the quarterfinals. But, if you have that ability to build yourself up, to give that extra 20 or 30% next weekend for your club, then go out and do it, because this is where it starts. This is the business end of the championship, and this is where every club player wants to be. And you're right, Ali, this is where we would have loved to be ourselves a number of years ago. We're in the quarterfinal of the intermediate championship, where you're getting through from the last group game to the quarterfinals of the senior championship. You do everything that you can to prepare and to be there and just put on a good show and make sure that it's your club that's going to be in the drum for the next round of the championship.
All right, Tommy Devane, let's put you on the spot. You pick your 4, I'll pick my 4. Sean Welsh can tell us which.
Well, I'll tell you which is right and which is wrong.
Who's right and who's wrong. I'll let you go first, Tommy.
Yeah, thanks, Ali, for that. St. Brendan's, Dunmore McHale's.
Okay.
I'll give you 2 there, St. Brendan's and Dunmore McHale's, and I'm just trying to think of the other one. I go for Glenamaddy, and I go for Ilan Ireland.
Right, Mr. Turner.
I'm going for the same 4. He obviously copied my homework, as he did for years. I know Tommy, in fairness, was a few years ahead of me in Jarlath, so he couldn't accuse him of that. I'm going for the same 4, Sean, believe it or not. Whether it works out like that, the chances are there'll be some slip up, or maybe a couple of them between now and Sunday night. But don't forget, the draws for the intermediate semi-finals will be at half-time in the Tuam Stars Corofin game on Sunday evening. That'll be about 5:20. And then the draws for the championship, for the quarterfinals of the senior championship, they'll be at the end of the game just after 6 o'clock on Sunday evening.
And before the other 2 games, as we won't look at them in depth, but they're huge games in the relegation. Hetford is it against Oranmore, Williamstown against Killerearn.
In the intermediate.
For those 4 teams, they are bigger games in the quarterfinals, because that's where you don't want to be.
Yeah, well, 2 wins and you get a chance to be safe. They'll have 2 more opportunities after that. But
you know, you don't want to be there.
It's amazing how things twist. Listen, loads of football action to look forward to this weekend. Next week, it's back to the hurling, and the club action just keeps on rolling. Thanks again to Seymour's. Thanks to Tommy for joining us. For myself and Sean, we'll chat to you next week.
Over the Line Extra, your weekly Galway GAA podcast with Ollie Turner and Sean Walsh in association with Seymour's Loch Ray.